A couple of housekeeping items. First, we do not have class next week. I will be away on vacation, so next week will be the 17th. So we don't meet on the 17th. We will be meeting on the 24th, and then we have a little hiatus because when I built the syllabus, we were planning on taking a congregational trip to Israel. Unfortunately, that trip is not happening because we didn't get enough signups. But anyway, the class is not meeting on the third or the 10th, correct? The 3rd or the 10th. So we have a little bit of a kind of interruption in our flow, but that's okay. And once we get back on it, we'll be on it. The second thing is that I brought copies of my new book with me. If you haven't yet ordered one and you would like to, you are welcome to do that tonight. All you need to do is sign this book orders list, and you can take a copy and then home and pay for it through the temple website, or the office will put it on your temple bill. So either way, you can do that, and all the proceeds of the book are going to Temple Beth-El. So just another way you can support the temple and hopefully enjoy the book. So you can let me know at the end of class if you'd like that. And I'm very proud of the book, and I look forward to hearing what you guys think of it. So, all right, with that, let's begin. Oh, and Mark's not here. Anyway, when Mark Kupferberg comes in, we should wish him a mazel tov. He was honored last night at the Kupferberg Center, and that's that's pretty special. Okay, so let's begin with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so we have a presentation tonight on a reading from Pat Siegel. So Pat, you want to come on up?
This is on the Mishnah Torah and the history of Halakha. Maimonides traced the oral transmission of the Halakha from Moses' time to Rabbi Judah the Prince's Mishnah, to Ravina and Rav Ashi's Babylonian Torah, and to his own Mishnah Torah. Rabbi Judah created the Mishnah in reaction to 3 main political crises: fewer disciples to carry on the oral tradition, disruptions created by the Roman government expanding and gaining power, and Israelites emigrating to distant countries, preventing direct oral transmission. Rabbi Judah's written Mishnah freed the Halakha from oral transmission and closed gaps in the chain of direct transmission from one person to the next. After Rabbi Judah's era, there was time of continuity and calm in the history of Halakha until Ravina and Rav Ashi's Babylonian Torah. Ravina and Rav Ashi were the last of the great sages who transcribed oral Torah, issued decrees, enacted ordinances, and instituted customs wherever Israelites lived. Then there was the second geopolitical crisis. Israelites were displaced to remote places, and the Jewish people no longer flocked to colleges as before. In each city, those who felt the divine call gathered together to study Torah. Maimonides depicts this disintegration and dispersion as more extreme than Rabbi Judah's time. It was substantially harder to maintain contact among these groups as wars and armies made travel insecure. It was this critical situation that motivated Maimonides to write the Mishneh Torah. Just as Rabbi Judah's Mishnah was in reaction to the first geopolitical crises, Maimonides' Mishneh Torah was in reaction to an even more intense crisis. Maimonides regards the rise of Islam and the dispersion of Jewish communities in its wake as extraordinary. He appears to relate the crisis of his own time to the destruction of Andalusian Jewry and a sense of being an exile himself. By explaining the transmission as an organic development interrupted by two sharp historical breaks, he forges a bond between Rabbi Judah's Mishnah and his own Mishneh Torah.
Thank you, Pat. Nicely done. Okay, so that was a great overview of the reading by Moshe Halbertal in our syllabus. So thank you very much, Pat. Great job. Okay, so we're going to continue our study in the Mishneh Torah. I want to start by picking back up in the laws of conversion that we started with last time. We got only through a little bit of it. It's a lot of material, and we're not going to be able to work through all that because I want to then move on to our next text. But let's see, Dory, if you want to pull it up. Sorry, we're going to go to Mishneh Torah Isurei Bia. Hilchot Isurei Bia. Okay, yeah, thank you. So it is in your binders behind the green tab in the Mishneh Torah section, and it's the first text there. Isurei Bia, the laws of forbidden sexual relations. All right, so yeah, I think we left off. I want to scroll down. We're going to skip a lot of it because it's just so long. Let's scroll down to chapter 14. So no, keep going where it'll say chapter 14. There we are, chapter 14. Okay, so the rest of chapter 13 is really interesting. I encourage you to read it on your own, but I want to touch in on the beginning of chapter 14, which talks about conversion, kind of the process and such, that is codified by Maimonides and is essentially what we do today. Okay, so chapter 14, halakha number 1. What is the procedure when accepting a righteous convert? When one of the Gentiles comes to convert, we inspect his background. If an ulterior motive for conversion is not found, we ask him, why did you choose to convert? Don't you know that in the present era, the Jews are afflicted, crushed, subjugated, strained, and suffering comes upon them? If he answers, I know, would it be that I be able to be a part of them? We accept him immediately. All right. So let's just look closely at halakha number 1 and unpack it. What do we see in here as key issues that Maimonides is raising? Andy.
Full knowledge and free will.
Okay, full knowledge and free will and knowledge of specifically what?
Trials and tribulations.
Yes, okay. What it means to be a Jew. And he's gonna unpack that or build it out a little bit more. But in halakha number 1, interestingly, the first thing that he begins with is that a prospective convert should know that to be a Jew subjects you to persecution and scorn. Okay, Adam.
And this is in contrast to the Christian and Islamic attitude where you're supposed to try to talk someone into it rather than out of it.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a talking out of it, right? Because someone says, I want to convert, like, just so you know, right? If you become a Jew, it's not all roses for us. So it is a discouragement. And the halakha is really kind of ambivalent about a conversion in a lot of ways. And in chapter 13, Maimonides gets into this a little bit, quoting some passages from the Talmud, which are very skeptical about conversion. We talked last time about the both the benefit and the potential liability of becoming a Jew, for one who is not currently a Jew, right? So the benefit is of joining the Jewish community is that you're part of the covenantal community and you have the opportunity to be in the special relationship with God. But at the same time, joining the Jewish people as a convert imposes obligations upon you that prior to your conversion you don't have. And so remember, we talked about last time concern that he voices here in his codification, which the Talmud also speaks about, and that is the problem that would come to a convert should they not be observant of the Torah. Because if they convert and then don't observe the mitzvot, then they're in breach, with God and with the covenant, whereas prior to conversion, they would not be in breach for not observing the mitzvot. So if somebody is coming to convert and there's some concern on the part of the Beit Din that this person may not live an observant life, then they have really almost a responsibility not to allow them to convert, because it would be harmful to their spiritual condition should they convert and then not become observant. So here, Maimonides is talking about kind of the social pitfalls of becoming a Jew, which is you're joining a community of people that are persecuted, and maybe you don't want to do that. All right, what else do you see here? Phil?
Distrust.
How do you mean?
When you ask someone, why do you want to join them? It's sort of a confrontational question. And I interpret that as being distrusting of their motives.
Okay, yeah, so he does talk about motive, and motive is really important in the halachot of conversion. So he says, we inspect his background. If ulterior motive for conversion is not found, then we go on and ask, why do you want to be a Jew? But the question of ulterior motive is really important. According to the halakha, the classical halakha, the only proper motive for conversion is a genuine desire to become a part of the Jewish people and observe the Torah. Which would mean that if somebody is converting so that they can marry a Jew, that's an ulterior motive. If someone is converting so that they can, the Talmud talks about for purposes of wealth or something, I'm not sure how that would work, but like if you were motivated by money or the prospect of wealth to convert, that would be considered an ulterior motive. Or for Seinfeld fans, if you were converting for the jokes, well, that would be an ulterior motive.
Only if you're a dentist.
Yeah, exactly. So now that's an interesting part of the halakha, specifically as it pertains to conversion for the purpose of marriage. Because, you know, in my experience, and I think generally speaking, at least in the Reform movement, I can't speak beyond that. But in the Reform movement, conversion for the sake of marriage is quite common, right? So a Jewish person and a non-Jewish person are dating or engaged, they're gonna get married, and the non-Jewish partner wants to explore conversion, you know, because they're marrying a Jew. If they weren't marrying the Jew, then, you know, they probably wouldn't be converting. Okay, so according to the classical halakha, that's a no-go because that's an ulterior motive. That said, as I said, it's very common that people do convert for marriage, and in fact, in Reform Responsa addresses this and comes down on the side of supporting conversion for the sake of marriage on the grounds that it's an opportunity. You know, somebody wants to enter the community, maybe if originally their motive is just for marriage and they're not super, you know, interested in Judaism or whatever on their own, it opens a door for them to grow more connected, you know, through their Jewish life. And so Reform Judaism has a practice of accepting conversion for the sake of marriage, but Maimonides in his code definitely doesn't. Okay, so what, yes, Jerry.
Dorothy had her hand up.
So Jerry's gonna go and then we'll call Dorothy.
When you do conversion work with somebody, do you ask why they are? Is that a common
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, sure. You know, we always ask, but if their reason is because I want to marry a Jewish person, that would not discourage. But, you know, but if someone says, you know, well, I mean, there could be, you could imagine ulterior motives that would disqualify you, you know, but marriage is not one of them in our practice. Dorothy, go ahead. You're muted, Dorothy.
You're muted. There you go.
There I go. It strikes me because there are some families that I know of where the non-Jewish soon-to-be partner was told that the only way the marriage would go through was if the person converted. So maybe there was a sort of an anticipation that some of the people who would be converting a bit under duress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Not free will.
because
Yeah.
the idea of that the halakha has for conversion is that the only reason, you know, the only real reason to convert is because this is the right spiritual path for you. You know, Judaism is the right community, the right religion for you. You know, if it's not, and you're just doing it so you can get married to somebody or whatever, then the sages feel like it's better to just not become Jewish because, you know, remember, if one becomes Jewish and doesn't uphold the mitzvot, it brings you into spiritual jeopardy. So a commitment to Judaism and the covenant and mitzvot are of utmost importance here. So my rabbi that I grew up with, he used to say that marriage is a journey of the heart and conversion is a journey of the soul, and they're different. And I you know, I agree with that, and I like that. And so, you know, in my practice as a rabbi, I would rather, you know, a couple get married as an interfaith couple than have somebody convert who doesn't really want to. And you know what I mean? Now, we ameliorate that situation in Reform Judaism because most Reform rabbis these days officiate, you know, interfaith marriages. I do. You know, so it removes the pressure, the duress that like, either I have to convert or we can't get married. We remove that. And I think that that's good, and I would just rather, I don't think, from my vantage point, I don't know how you guys feel. I don't want somebody to convert to Judaism when they kind of really don't want to, or they're not super enthusiastic about it, but, they're just doing it because they feel like they have to. Okay, Ed?
What's your thoughts on how that impacts, raising children and religion for children and religious education for children?
Well, I mean, we have lots of families in Reformed congregations these days who are interfaith families, and they, raise their children as Jews, and we have lots of couples that are not interfaith couples, and they don't raise their children as Jews. I mean, statistically, it is true that interfaith families raise Jewish children far less than in married families, but I think it's really on a micro level, it's case by case. But let's get someone who hasn't. Yeah, David.
Was there a change in the halakhic viewpoint of conversion after the Second Temple was destroyed, when the Jews dispersed, and the view that we're, a nation and we're together and we're going to grow the nation, naturally without relying upon conversion?
I'm not sure about that. There's a book that traces this history. I read it a long time ago and I just can't remember what the author says about those things. But if you're interested in this topic, I recommend a book called The Beginnings of Jewishness. The author is Shai Cohen, Cohen. It's very interesting, and he just goes from antiquity all the way, through the I guess probably through the Middle Ages, tracing how conversion came to be. The Torah, the Hebrew Bible, does not have a concept of conversion. Now, the rabbis, the sages, read it back into the Torah retrospectively, and the story of Ruth becomes the rabbinic paradigm of conversion, and she's cast as the first convert. But in the biblical period, there is no such thing as conversion, because Israeliteness is an ethnicity, or you can't, just like black or Asian, like you can't change to become a black person, in our time. You can associate with black people, you can identify with them, but you can't change yourself to be a black person. And that's how the Torah understands Israeliteness. But then conversion comes in later during the rabbinic period. Adam.
So the question is, when you ask this question, before somebody is taught about Judaism or after? Because how can someone know about all this stuff unless they study what it means to be a Jew first?
Well, the first question he's saying is that your ass is, irrespective of all the things that you need to know, all the mitzvot, everything, just know that if you join our community, you're subjecting yourself to persecution. That's the first thing. Then if the person says, I'm aware of that and I want to go forward, then you go forward. So look, number 2, he says, we inform him of the fundamentals of the faith, i.e. the unity of God and the prohibition against the worship of false deities. We elaborate on this matter. We inform him about some of the easy mitzvot and some of the more severe ones. We do not elaborate on this matter. We should look at the footnotes on that. We inform him of let's scroll down a little, Dory, please. We inform him of the transgressions of not leaving leket, shchicha, peah, those are the corners of the fields and so forth, according to the Torah. You have to leave for the poor, and the second tithe. And we inform him of the punishment given for violating the mitzvot. What is implied? We tell him, before you came to our faith, if you partook of fat, you were not liable for your soul to be cut off. If you desecrated the Sabbath, you were not liable to be stoned to death. Now, after you convert, if you partake of fat, that's not just general fat. Otherwise, we'd be all in big trouble. It's the fat of the sacrifices or whatever. You partake of fat, you are liable for your soul to be cut off. If you desecrate the Sabbath, you are liable to be stoned to death. We do not teach him all the particulars, lest this cause him concern and turn him away from a good path to a bad path. For at the outset, we draw a person forth with soft and appealing words. As Hosea states, with cords of man I drew them forth, and then continues with bonds of love. This is interesting, because in light of what Adam had said, in response to halakha number 1, we start off with a bit of a caution, or a discouragement, just to warn you, you become a part of a community that's often persecuted and scorned. And then he says, yeah, I know, and I want to be part of it. Then you teach him a little bit about Judaism. Notice he doesn't have to study, doesn't have to know everything. It's a little bit about the simple mitzvot, a little bit about the more strict ones. And he goes on to say, don't get too much into the weeds because you might scare them off. So that's a kind of an opposite. All right, so what do you make of this 1 and 2, kind of put together as the attitude and approach toward conversion? Thoughts? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I think that you initially want to tell it it's not so easy, but I think there is some appreciation of wanting to grow the Jewish community.
Yeah.
I think with us all sent all over the globe, basically, they want to still grow. I think.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. Jerry,
Jerry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like Rabbi Hosea was very smart, because there's a psychological principle of intermittent positive regard, and it's possibly the most addictive thing, that you're not positive all the time. You have to give criticism, but then you want to soften it up a little bit with positive regard too, and it makes people really want to do something.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice. Dorothy, go ahead.
You muted. There you go.
It would seem to me, though, that in my experience, in my profession, the most difficult of all of the mitzvot to go along with is circumcision. I think that's harder for many people, especially as an adult, than keeping kosher, keeping Shabbat, letting go of old familiarities. This is a very big challenge. And it's a challenge to many Jews who were raised Jewish. So it surprises me. I know it comes up later, but it surprises me that's number one, that's not number one here, to be honest. If you really want to see how somebody feels about converting to Judaism, hey, sir, you're 25, 30 years old, and you are going to have to be circumcised. Now, how do you feel?
Yeah.
By the way, they didn't have anesthesia and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
really a big ask.
It is. It is. And so, the threshold that's being established for becoming a Jew is high, in a variety of ways. And the sages wanted it that way. This is, converting to Judaism is different from converting to Christianity. In Christianity is a profession of faith. So you state your faith, you accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, and you become baptized and you're a Christian. Judaism is a different kind of a thing. It's not only, we learned last time, it's not only about acceptance of a creed and, religious practice. It's also about joining a nation, a people. So the barriers are definitely higher, and and here I think what we see is, a desire to open doors to people who are really sincere and who want to do it, and make it possible for them to walk down this path and grow in their path, but not to just open the doors to it. It's a selective kind of a thing, expecting a certain level of commitment from the outset. All right, let's scroll down to number 3. Oh, I wanted to see, there was a couple of footnotes that I thought wanted to just look at. What did it say? It was, I can't, number, yeah, I can't see it. You know what, Dory, I'm gonna put if you wouldn't mind lowering the screen, I'm gonna put mine up so I can navigate it in where I wanna go. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so we had said, I was interested in the footnotes on number 4 and 5. Oh, we elaborate on certain things, the unity of God, and the prohibition on idolatry, because they are fundamentals of our faith. We don't elaborate on some of the other things. The note says this law, quoted by Shulchan Aruch, indicates that even the opinions which require a convert to accept the observance of the mitzvot do not require him to accept all of the mitzvot individually. Instead, he must make a general commitment to conform to Jewish practice. Okay, so I guess the idea is the person needs to have a kind of a critical mass of knowledge where you feel like, hey, I understand like kind of what I'm getting into here, but they don't need to get into the weeds on everything. They're making a general commitment to uphold the precepts of the Torah, and they'll learn along the way. All right, number halakha 3. Just as he is informed of the punishment for disobeying the commandments, so too he is informed about the reward for their observance. We tell him that by observing these mitzvot, he will merit the life of the world to come. For there is no completely righteous man other than a master of wisdom who observes these mitzvot and knows them. 4, we tell him, know that the world to come is hidden away only for the righteous. They are the Jews. Okay, number 10. The commentaries, footnote 10. The commentaries have questioned the Rambam's statements here, noting that in Hilchot Tshuva and other sources, he states that the pious among the Gentiles have a share in the world to come. Among the resolutions offered is that all of Israel have a share in the world to come. That's in Perek Chelek that we read. By virtue of the essential godliness of the Jewish soul, they are inherently worthy of a portion in this eternal good. A Gentile must, however, earn his portion through his deeds. It is not hidden away for him. Right. So the Mishnah says that the righteous of all nations have a share in the world to come. But the idea I think he's saying here is that all Jews have a share in the world to come.
Yeah, is the world to come meaning after the Messiah? Is that right there?
I'm not entirely sure.
Or heaven?
So Maimonides has various stages. There's death, there's the life after death, and then there's the coming of the Messiah and the resurrection. The world to come, I believe he means and immediately after death. But I'm not entirely sure. Okay, let's look. Oops, did I get to the end? Yeah, 4. We tell him. Oh, we did that. The fact that you see Israel suffering difficulty in this world reflects the good that is hidden away for them. For they cannot receive an abundance of good in this world as the Gentiles do. For their hearts may become haughty, and they will err and lose the reward of the world to come. As Deuteronomy states, Jeshurun became fat and rebelled. It's one of the best verses in the Torah. Yeah, so here he's dealing with the problem of why the righteous suffer in this world. Why do bad things happen to good people? Okay, and can you infer his answer from what he's telling us? Why do bad things happen to good people? And he's talking specifically about Jews here. Yeah, Andy.
Because if you had only good, then you would have nothing to be waiting for when you come to the world after. He compares it to a wealthy person or people who have everything. You're supposed to suffer a little so that, as he says, mirror.
Okay.
Will come the other way.
Yeah, there is that this world is regarded as just a little dot against the scope of time, and that the world to come, we may have suffering in this world, but the recompense in the world to come is eternal good. It's so much better than the suffering that's experienced in this world. Far outweighs it. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing that he says in here is that if you prosper too much in this world, then it could take, you can get a big head and it'll take you off the path of righteousness. Adam.
It's interesting, the title of the book is not why do good things, bad things,
It's when.
but
Yeah.
when.
Right.
It's different because that means it's inevitable
Yeah.
that bad things are gonna happen, and we have to try to understand.
True. Yep. Okay, let's read number 5. The Holy One, blessed be he, brings upon them an abundance of retribution, solely that they will not perish. For all the other nations will perish, and they will prevail. We elaborate on this concept to make them feel cherished. If the prospective convert retracts and does not want to accept the mitzvot, he goes on his way. If he accepts their observance, we do not have him wait, but instead circumcise him immediately. If he was already circumcised, we draw the blood of circumcision from him. We wait until he heals entirely and then immerse him. Now it looks like the first paragraph there of halakha number 5 really belongs with the previous one. But for whatever reason, it's broken out that way. And then the next thing is, you talk to him about all of these things, the reward and punishment, the world to come, all this. And then if the person's still on board, the next thing is circumcision. And then ultimately immersion after the circumcision is healed. And apropos what Dorothy had said, the circumcision can be a great deterrent. And I had, at one point in my rabbinate, I had a person that was interested in conversion, and was really a sincere person about wanting to be Jewish, but was just like terrified of the idea of circumcision as a grown man, which you can understand, right? And in my conversion practice, I require circumcision. And I was explaining to him that this is what is required, but you don't have to become a Jew. It's okay. And especially in Reform Judaism, where we welcome non-Jewish spouses and whatnot into our community, and they really can participate and are welcome and fully.
Is
You
it
know,
a
so-
full circumcision or just, you have to do? it?
No, full, if they're uncircumcised, they have to be
So
circumcised.
you just have to take.
That's if they're already circumcised, with a hatafat downbreed, taking a little bit of the blood. But, explain to this person that, the barrier to entry is high, but Reform Judaism is ameliorated that in other ways, and if you choose to, be a part of our community and participate, and as you are, this person was married to a Jewish woman, and participate as you are, that we love and accept you as you are. You don't have to do this. Because I understand that's a really big deal. And he thought about it for a while, and ultimately he did go through with the circumcision. Yeah, Sandy.
Just a quick aside, about 20 years ago in Russia,
Yeah.
we were in Moscow with the Chabad. They were doing 15 to 20 circumcisions of adult men a week who had
Wow.
rediscovered their Judaism, their past. And I think the men on the trip were more shocked than the women.
Wow. All right, I want to read a little more, then we're gonna shift in 5 minutes to the next text. All right, number 6. 3 judges stand over him and inform him about some of the easy mitzvot and some of the more severe ones a second time, while he stands in the water. If the convert was female, women position her in the water until her neck, while the judges are outside. Because of course the judges are only male in this case. The judges then enter and inform her about some of the easy mitzvot and some of the more severe ones while she is sitting in the water. Then she immerses herself in their presence. Afterwards, they turn their faces away and depart so that they will not see her when she ascends from the water. Okay, so that's procedure. Let's look at this. This is interesting too, number 7. And this segues into what I was talking about with the guy that maybe they don't want to go through a circumcision. And that person would be considered Ger Toshav, which it translates here as a resident alien. It's not like a super nice phrase, but in the Hebrew, Ger Toshav, this is someone, a non-Jew who dwells with you. Okay. What is meant by a resident alien? A Gentile who makes a commitment not to worship false deities and to observe the other 6 universal laws commanded to Noah's descendants. He does not circumcise himself nor immerse. We accept this commitment, and he is considered one of the pious Gentiles. I mean, this is, this is a forerunner, like a very early kind of forerunner of how we in Reform Judaism welcome, non-Jewish spouses of Jews and so forth to be part of our community. I mean, in Maimonides here is talking about this person they're part of us. We consider them to be pious Gentiles. Now, in Maimonides' legal universe, a pious Gentile would not have, all of the same rites and ritual practice and so forth that a Jew does. But nevertheless, they, are welcome to dwell among you. Why is he called a resident? Because we are permitted to allow him to dwell among us in Eretz Yisrael, as explained in Hilchot Avodah Zarah. That's the laws of idolatry. Okay. We accept resident aliens only during the era when the Jubilee year is observed. In the present era, even if a Gentile makes a commitment not to observe the entire Torah with the exception of one minor point, he is not accepted. Okay, so this goes to your question, David, about temple times versus post-temple times. And what he seems to be saying here is that In post-temple times, the access to the conversion is more stringent. If a person commits to the entire Torah except for one minor point, they're not accepted. That's like when I was telling you last time about the discussion in the Tosefta, earlier Mishnaic literature, about where an opinion is offered is that a pious person like this who comes and observes, basically like lives a Jewish life, to use our modern terminology, lives a Jewish life but hasn't converted, well, maybe they should just be kind of considered Jews by common law or whatever. And the sages ultimately reject it because on this basis, that if they don't convert, then they are not accepting the entirety. Because conversion is part of the halakha. That's how someone becomes Jewish. So if you don't accept that, you're not accepting the Torah in its entirety. Okay, so I want to pause here on the conversion stuff, or stop on the conversion stuff now, and turn to the next text. But let me just take, if there's maybe two comments, but from somebody who hasn't spoken yet, if you have any questions or comments, and you haven't said anything yet. Jackie.
I just had a quick question. If someone had been circumcised, why is it just for the ritual of bleeding?
Yeah, because the idea behind circumcision is not strictly the physical condition of it. So it's circumcision for the sake of the covenant. Because circumcision is a sign of the covenant. This is how you think about the covenant with between the Jewish people and God. Covenant's a contract. You sign a contract. The way that Jews sign the contract, as it were, males, is through circumcision. So if you were circumcised as a Gentile, yes, you have you're in the physical condition of a circumcised person, but your circumcision was not done for the sake of the covenant. So there's a ritual called hatafat dam brit, which is for a convert or someone who's going through conversion and is already circumcised. A moil will do a little prick. Okay.
No pun intended.
Yeah, or maybe it was intended. We'll draw a little blood and recite the blessing for it, and it is as though circumcision for the sake of the covenant. Okay, was there another question or comment from someone who hasn't said anything yet?
It's easier for women.
It is. That's true. It's easier for women. Okay, so let's move on then. I want to switch subjects. And again, read the rest of the conversion stuff on your own. It's really great. It's just a little too long for us to do. We're going to turn to Purim. Purim is coming in a few weeks. And so I thought I'd share what Maimonides does with laws of Purim, and there's some really fascinating stuff in there. So I'm going to open it up. This comes from it's there. It's in your binder. It's the next text. It's the page. The cover page of the text says Hilchot Megillah v'Chanukah. It's the laws of Megillah and Hanukkah. So remember, Maimonides is organizing his laws by subject, and it's very easy to find. So if you want to know anything about Purim, you'll look it up in the laws of Purim. Very easy. And I hope that you're noticing his style of writing here, which is clear, concise, meant to be accessible to everyone, unlike his philosophy. Okay, so this is the page, the page, what it looks like, and remember, just to refresh your memory, the middle here on this page is Maimonides, Mishnah Torah, and the texts around it are commentaries, because we always end up finding equilibrium with this kind of style. Scholars in conversation with each other across time and space on the page. That's the Jewish way. So what you have here, let me just show you on the page. The middle is Mishnah Torah. In the up here in the left, where my cursor is, the top, the left column over here, the top of it, if you can look at the Hebrew letters, notice it says Kesef Mishneh. Kesef Mishneh. That's the name of a commentary on Mishnah Torah, written by Rabbi Joseph Caro. Rabbi Joseph Caro is famous for other things. What's he most famous for? Anybody know his name? Yes, he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, okay, which is ultimately becomes kind of the definitive code of Jewish law in the 16th century. That's when he writes it. But before writing Shulchan Aruch, he writes a commentary on Maimonides' Mishnah Torah. And Maimonides is a very important authority for Caro in the rulings that he makes in Shulchan Aruch. So although I talked about last time how Maimonides' project, his idea or aspiration for Mishnah Torah was that it would become the definitive book. Nobody would need anything else once they have the Mishnah Torah. He didn't succeed at that because by succeeding at making the text really clear and concise, which necessitated eliminating the give and take, the citation of sources. He made it very clear and concise, but that the culture, the Jewish ethos could not accommodate that. It's too dogmatic for the Jewish culture, which values multivocality and knowing your sources. So Mishnah Torah isn't the last word on a law code. But Caro comes along several hundred years after Maimonides and writes Shulchan Aruch, which incorporates the kind of concise and systematic approach of Maimonides, but also with a little more of the give and take and the citation of sources. And that's another story about how he achieves that. But Caro achieves what Maimonides couldn't in terms of making his book definitive, but he relies heavily on Maimonides' rulings. For Yosef Caro in the Shulchan Aruch, he determines his rulings by looking first at the rulings of three of the prominent earlier codifiers, Maimonides being the most important of the three. Okay, so the influence of the Mishnah Torah carries forward. So Kesef Mishnah is Caro's commentary. Then in the right, there's Magid Mishnah, another commentary. I can't remember at the moment who wrote that one. And then and in Kesef Mishnah, in Caro's commentary, he's a supporter of Maimonides' work. He believes in it, as I said. So what he does in the Kesef Mishnah is he tries to show Maimonides' work for him. Basically saying like, Maimonides doesn't tell you this, but take a look over at this, take a look over at that. That's where he's getting it from. So he's essentially backing up Maimonides. Whereas if you look here in the middle, there's this little one right here, kind of in between Kesef Mishnah and Mishnah Torah. It says Hasagat HaRaiva. This is Rabbi Abraham ben David, a Spanish rabbi, 13th or 14th century. He was an opponent of Maimonides. So he's writing a commentary here, criticizing Maimonides' rulings. Maybe not in every case, but a lot of it. is he's pointing out the flaws and why Maimonides is wrong. And all of that exists on the same page, which makes our discourse very cool and pluralistic. Okay, so now I want to go into, we're going to look at chapter 2 of Hilchot Megillah, the laws of the Megillah, which is Purim. Okay, so he gets into some, he starts with some funny things and then gets into this a little bit more meat. All right, number one, when a person reads the Megillah in improper sequence, he does not fulfill his obligation. There's a mitzvah to read the Megillah on Purim. That, and just so you're aware of this, the mitzvah to read the Megillah on Purim is not one of the 613. Why is it not one of the 613? It's after the Torah, right? The Megillah Esther is later, but it's in the Bible. There are 7 commandments. In addition to the 613, there are 7 that are called D'Rabbanan, means they come from the sages, not from the Torah, but from the sages. Okay, reading the Megillah on Purim is one. Lighting Shabbat candles is another one. Okay, I remember the other ones off the top of my head, but there are 7 that are additions, and reading the Megillah is one. Okay, so when a person reads the Megillah in an improper sequence, he does not fulfill his obligation. If a person was reading, forgot a verse, and read the following verse, went back and read the verse he forgot, and then read a third verse, he does not fulfill his obligation because he read a verse in an improper sequence. What should he do instead? He should begin from the second verse, the verse he forgot, and continue reading the Megillah in its proper order. Why? I don't know why this is a matter of concern for him, but it is. Should one encounter a congregation that has already read half of the Megillah, one should not say, I will read the latter half together with this congregation and then go back and read the first half. For this is reading in improper sequence. Instead, one should read the entire Megillah from beginning to end in order. That seems to be the mitzvah. It has to be in order. To look at maybe the footnotes will say something about why that's so important. When a person reads a portion and pauses and then goes back and continues reading, since he read in order, he fulfills his obligation, even though the entire Megillah could have been read while he had paused. Okay, number 3, a person who reads the Megillah by heart does not fulfill his obligation. Okay, so what are we learning so far about the mitzvah of reading the Megillah?
We have a hand up on Zoom.
Okay, iPhone, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Rabbi, it's Naeem. Good evening.
Oh, hey.
So, I think it's because I think it's all about, Maimonides' original idea, to know God. So you don't really know God if you're just mouthing the words or you're not reading in the proper order. You need to understand, and that's how you know God, by understanding the verses of the Megillah. Then you're truly knowing.
Okay, good, nice. We're going to get into that because he does include here, and this is all Talmudic material. He's not just inventing it, but he does deal with the issue of hearing text read in translation, which it makes this passage really fascinating. But if you look at let's look at footnote 2 on the previous page. Because footnote 2, footnote 2 was talking about if you read in improper sequence, you haven't fulfilled your obligation. So footnote 2 says, in his commentary on the Mishnah, the Rambam explains this ruling as follows. Then move down to the bottom. Esther 9:28 states, these days are remembered and commemorated, literally done. Just as it is impossible for a person who is involved in work to do anything that affects the past, so too in reading the Megillah, one should not read a passage at the end which should have been read previously. The Rambam's explanation is based on Megillah 17a. Our rendition of the passage from the commentary on the Mishnah was based on Rav Kapach's translation. Significantly, the commonly published translation appears to be slightly out of context with this Talmudic passage. Okay, I don't understand that. These days are remembering, just as it's impossible for a person who's doing something to do anything that affects the past. You can't change the past. You can't change the past. So he's building this, or the Talmud anyway, built this on the basis of the reading of the Megillah as an act of doing. Okay, I don't know. It's my old boss used to say, you have to cogitate on that one. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's read. We'll get to comments in a second. Unless, Dorothy, did you have a comment on that specific passage that we read? Or a thought?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
It
go
sounds
ahead.
like a description of OCD. It really does. Of
OCD.
OCD, where where you
That's
have to
rabbinic
do
law
things
generally.
exactly in the right order. You've got to
Yeah.
line them up in the right order. And if you don't, you've got to go back to the beginning and get them in the right order. And so that's exactly the way it translates to me.
And that is true, I think, as an ethos of rabbinic halakha generally. You know, have you ever seen the memes on Facebook about like if Christmas were a Jewish holiday? It's very funny. There's lots of good versions of it, but if Christmas were a Jewish holiday, some people like write these Hilchot Christmas, the laws of Christmas. Is like the tree has to be this high, but it can't be this high. The leaves have to be this wide, but not too wide. If it cut, it's great. Just all of the, how long can you hang the ornament on the tree? It can be displayed until sundown at this time, but not afterwards. And that's just the entire. That's how rabbinic law is. They are very OCD, the rabbis, and that's a. Well, I mean, at least to the enterprise of law that he's engaged in, it definitely is. I mean, there's a contemporary scholar named Joel Hoffman. You may know Larry Hoffman if you would. He has a son named Joel Hoffman, who's a scholar, and he does a very interesting talk about kind of eras of Judaism as he kind of sees it, and he talks about the rabbinic era and he does it with great humor, kind of like the Hilchot Christmas stuff. He talks about that rabbinic law is it's a particular kind of spirituality. I mean, it's just the rabbis find extraordinary spiritual fulfillment in minutia. It's just, I mean, that may not be the kind of spirituality that resonates with you. Joel Hoffman argues that Jews today, or at least non-Orthodox Jews today, have a different kind of spiritual matrix. Like we don't find the same satisfaction that the rabbis did, in the minutia, but it's just a way of being spiritual. That if you can identify every minute detail of God's will, somehow, like Naeem said, you're encountering the divine in a very powerful way. So that's what the halakha is really all about. All right, number 2. We read that. Number 3, yeah. So reading by heart. So just reciting, if you memorize the Megillah, that is not fulfilling the obligation, because it's actually the act of reading the text from beginning to end that fulfills the mitzvah. Now he goes on, a person who speaks a language other than Hebrew and hears the Megillah read in Hebrew, written in the Holy Script, fulfills his obligation, although he does not understand what is being read. Okay. Oh, the next one is weird. Okay, but it's still muted. Similarly, if the Megillah was written in Greek, a person who hears it, even one who speaks Hebrew, fulfills his obligation, although he does not understand what is being read. Okay, so yeah, there's two parts of it. So let's first talk about the reading the Megillah in Hebrew when you don't understand it. Why does that fulfill the obligation?
It's the holy language.
It is the holy language.
It has spiritual meaning.
Okay, yeah, so this opens the door to a philosophical conversation or debate about the function of language, and specifically the Hebrew language in Judaism. Now, this was a matter in the mid-19th century in Germany, when the kind of early reformers were developing Reform Judaism and working out, kind of what their practices in Reform synagogues was going to be like and so forth. There were two camps. One camp argued that the liturgy should be recited in German because that's the language that our people understand. The other camp argued that the liturgy should be recited in Hebrew because it's the holy language. All right, so what
We have two hands up on Zoom.
Okay, thanks. When you're thinking about it framed in that way, what are the issues at work there? Okay, Karen, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I guess it's following up on that whole thing about the emphasis is on the oral reading, the listening, the hearing, but he's saying you don't need to comprehend.
Right.
And that's an oxymoron to me.
Why?
Where's the sincerity? If you don't comprehend what you're reading, it has no real meaning. Where's the sincerity in the koach?
So the reformers, so the reformers who argued for the synagogue liturgy to be read in German took that viewpoint, that if you don't understand what's being said, then what's the point of it, right? You're not really engaged with the liturgy because you don't understand it. But what would the people who argue that the liturgy should be recited in Hebrew, even if you don't understand it, be? What would from their perspective, would it be, Pat?
Well, I don't understand Hebrew.
Uh-huh.
But I think I appreciate the feeling of the words and the music and whatever it is in Hebrew, that in sense, because I don't understand it, it seems more spiritual to me.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's one aspect, yeah, David?
It's as it was written 2,000 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And that's really that's the importance of the story.
Were you about to say the whole Megillah? Yeah.
That we've read that story as it was written every Purim.
Okay.
And we don't need to know the meaning of every single word.
Okay.
We need to know that we're celebrating what occurred and hearing Haman and Achashverosh and hearing the bits and pieces. You don't really need to know, that, you know, the person was wearing a feather in their hat and.
Maybe not, or at least it's pointing, I think you're bringing up the idea that understanding is more than just a semantic concept. Right? And then specifically when it comes to ritual performance, that semantic understanding is not the totality of it. In fact, maybe that's not even the point. So to hear the text read in the holy language conveys meaning of its own kind, whether or not you understand the semantic meaning of the words. Okay, so, you know, the best example of this always that I give when we're talking about levels of meaning and language is the Kaddish. Me too. The mourner's Kaddish, okay, is the best example of this because we read that prayer. The prayer happens to be in Aramaic. And when we read that, when we say that prayer, what does the prayer mean? What does the Kaddish mean?
Celebrating the beauty of life, really.
Celebrating the beauty of life. Okay.
Praising God.
Praising God. What else does the Kaddish mean?
Holiness.
Holiness does, yeah.
The same prayer that people have been saying.
That is the prayer that people have been saying. But nobody has said something which I think you're all.
It's a sanctification of God. It's a sanctification.
What does the Kaddish really mean?
It's a sanctification of God.
Okay, but what does the Kaddish really mean?
Sort of reverence for the person who died.
It's about memory. We say it for our loved ones who died. When push comes to shove, you're saying the Kaddish not for its semantic meaning. It's true, the semantic meaning of the Kaddish is all about praising God. But when you come to the synagogue, that's not why you're saying the Kaddish. You're saying the Kaddish because it's about memory, it's about honoring your loved ones, all of which has nothing to do with the semantic meaning of the Kaddish. Okay, the Kaddish is more, the meaning of the Kaddish is far more resonant for, I would say probably for most Jews, certainly in our community, far more resonant on the non-semantic level than it is on the semantic level. Well, how would you feel if you read the Mourner's Kaddish in the English? It doesn't work, and it doesn't work, because you're so used, right? You know the cadence and the sound of the Kaddish, and it would feel weird. But also, you read the words, you'd be saying it. We remember our loved ones, and now let's say it like, "May the great and holy name." You're like, well, what does that have to do with remembering my loved ones? And the answer is absolutely nothing. What has to do with remembering my loved ones is the non-semantic meaning of the Aramaic text. Okay, so that shows you how meaning is conveyed in a ritual practice on a non-semantic level. And here Maimonides is telling us, and he's following the Talmud here, that the mitzvah in the Megillah is to hear the text read. Now there's more to it, so he goes on, but at this point anyway, the mitzvah is to hear the text read in the original holy language, because there is meaning conveyed by experiencing that's different from hearing it read in English or in German or whatever vernacular you speak. Okay, but then he gives you the Greek thing. Okay, and the Greek thing is very weird. But what you have to know is that in the Talmud, the sages regard Greek as like a quasi-holy language. Greek is different from other languages for the sages. I mean, they lived in the Hellenistic world. There's something about it, and I don't know, I'm surely there's scholarship, but they do talk about this, that they treat Hebrew and Greek as being like in a category that's different from other kinds of languages. The influence of Hellenistic culture.
Like
Yeah.
Aramaic.
Aramaic, yeah. Aramaic is one, so it's like Greek is in that group of languages for the sages. Okay, so if you hear the text read in Greek, you fulfilled the obligation, even if you don't speak Greek.
That's it was originally written in Greek, that's what it said.
If the Megillah was written, if you're hearing it from a scroll, because always to fulfill the mitzvah of Megillah, you have to hear the text read from a scroll. Okay, so you can't read it from a book, you can't read it from heart, you have to read it from a scroll. But he's saying if the scroll was written in Greek, and then he's just quoting the Talmud here, and the Talmud, and that's so fascinating, right? That there were scrolls, clearly because the Talmud talks about them, in the ancient world, there were Megillah scrolls that were written in Greek. Not like just book, translations or whatever, like actual scrolls of Megillah written in Greek. Now, the actual writing of the text is also really important, and this falls into the discussions in the Talmud about Megillah. Let's think about other things, other ritual practices or other ritual items that are like this. If you had to develop a category, here they're talking about a text that's written in a particular, has to be written in a particular language. Whether you understand the language or not, the mitzvah is fulfilled through a text written in a particular language. And not only that, but actually in a particular style of writing. What else does that apply to in Judaism?
You have a hand up on Zoom.
Naeem, go ahead.
Yeah, let me try to answer that. I'd say the blessings for the wine and the bread on Shabbat are definitely in that category.
No, because those are blessings that are Hebrew blessings, but it doesn't matter what you read them from. And you could say
I see.
right?
Okay.
My question is, what other rituals in Judaism do we have where it matters not only what's being said, but what it's being read from and the manner in which it's written? David. Torah scroll is one, for sure. What else, Frank? Yeah, the Torah. Do you think of anything else? Bless you. I will say this. All of you has one. A mezuzah. That's right. Okay, so a mezuzah, that's a mitzvah, it has to be put on the doorpost. And the inside there's a little scroll that has a passage from the Torah, and it matters. That scroll matters, not for what it says per se. I mean, there has to be certain text written on it, but the scroll inside the mezuzah matters not only for what it says. It matters in terms of what kind of parchment it's written on, how it's written in terms of the letters and all of that, right? And here's the kicker with a mezuzah. Where does that scroll go? It goes on your door, but is it just a scroll on your door? Are you just taking a scroll and pinning it to the doorpost? What are you doing with the scroll? It goes inside the box, meaning what? You can't see it, right? That scroll is not even for reading.
Right, you can't read it. You can't read it.
It has to be written in a particular way. It has to be written on a particular parchment, in a particular language, etc. And yet, you don't even read it, which is helping us get to a deeper understanding of the mitzvah of Megillah. It's not only about the reading for the sake of hearing and knowing the story. There's more to it. And Judaism does this in lots of ways. Tefillin is another one. Inside the tefillin are scrolls. you can't even see them, like, it's even different from a mezuzah. You might be able to see through a mezuzah and at least know that a scroll is there. For tefillin, you don't even really know that a scroll is there. The only way to know is to break open the tefillin, right? And yet, in order for the tefillin to be kosher, for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah, the scrolls have to be in there. They have to be written properly on the proper paper. So what do we make of that? OCD, yeah, Mickey says OCD. Sharon.
Again, here.
To create a feeling of ritual and purity.
Okay, Sharon says that these are a matter of ritual purity, to create a feeling of ritual purity. Okay, why?
I think you internalize it, especially the repetition of it.
Okay, so there's an internalizing of hearing the text read, for instance. Pat?
Ritual maintains your Judaism going forward.
Okay, all right, ritual. So that goes back to the question that I said in the debate amongst the early reformers about vernacular versus Hebrew. The people who said that liturgy needed to be recited in Hebrew were not saying that everybody just needs to learn how to understand Hebrew, because for them, the purpose of the liturgy was not semantic understanding, it was something else. That they believed that the Hebrew language conveys something experiential or whatever that's non-semantic, but it conveys meaning in ways that no other language does. You could even say that any language conveys meaning in its own particular way. There's an interesting book by a legal theorist named James Boyd White, the book is called Justice in Translation, and he says in there that every act of translation is an act of interpretation and creating something new, that you can never fully express something that's said in French, for example, in English. You can never fully express something that's said in English in Spanish. It's just each language expresses things on its own terms. And so the rabbis who said, no, the synagogue liturgy has to be read in Hebrew is because a translation doesn't convey the same thing. And then to Pat's point, or Sharon's point about preserving things, that they saw, the Hebrew advocates saw the Hebrew language specifically as a container, like a vessel in which Judaism is transmitted and preserved. And that, like, if you break the vessel and you substitute it with a different one, it's just not the same thing. Like Judaism in English is not the same thing as Judaism in Hebrew. And Chatam Sofer, the father of Haredi Judaism from Hungary in the 18th, early 19th century, said that the liturgy absolutely must be read in the Hebrew language, because it's through language that language it creates like boundaries for a community, that like through language is how communities cultures preserve themselves, right? And that's a feature of culture. Okay, so this is all embedded in this halacha, which I think is cool. All right, number 4. If, however, it was written in Aramaic or in another language of Gentile origin, one who listens to this reading fulfills his obligation only when he understands that language, and only when the Megillah is written in that language. So that's an interesting kind of sub deal. It's like, if it's not going to be in one of the two kind of holy or quasi-holy language, Hebrew or Greek, then now we move to the level of semantic understanding. But semantic understanding is clearly secondary. In contrast, if the Megillah was written in Hebrew and one read in Aramaic for a person who understood that tongue, one does not fulfill one's obligation, for one is reading by heart. And since the reader cannot fulfill his obligation, the person hearing it read by him also cannot. Now number 5, this deals with intention. A person who was reading the Megillah without the desired intent does not fulfill his obligation. What is implied? That he was writing the Megillah. This is like a situation. Let's imagine a person's writing the Megillah, explaining it or checking it. If he had the intent to fulfill his obligation with this reading, his obligation is fulfilled. If he did not have this intent, he did not fulfill his obligation. Should one read while dozing off? He fulfills his obligation since he is not sound asleep. You can take that one into services with you, right? All right, but what's the deal with intention here? How is he, what's he concerned with?
That you intend to obey the rules.
That you intend to obey the rules, and specifically that you intend to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay? That the intention to fulfill the mitzvah has to be there. So just reading a Megillah without that inner focus is not performing the mitzvah. This is important when we talk about prayer. It's the same thing. Just reading the liturgy, sitting there and just reading, if you don't have intentionality, is not prayer. Because the outward performance is not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is fulfilled in the inward performance, the intentionality. Frank, you want to say something? Yeah.
On the other hand,
Yeah.
you can't be trying to explain it or check it. You just have to be reading it. I am reading this. so
Yeah.
I do understand.
That's the mitzvah.
No, I'm not adding any words.
Right, exactly.
Explaining anything.
Yeah, this is the mitzvah, is reading this story in its particular, word for word, straight from beginning to end. All right, 6. When does the statement that a person can fulfill his obligation by reading, when writing the Megillah apply? When he intends to fulfill his obligation to read it by reading from the scroll which he has copied. If, however, he intends to fulfill his obligation by reading the scroll that he's writing at present, he does not fulfill his obligation, for one can fulfill one's obligation only by reading from a scroll that was completely written at the time of the reading. So yes, this is major, it's called in Hebrew is midakdik. It means very precise. Very precise. Let's see if let me take a look and just see what else I wanted to show you in here. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see if I was want to do that. So he goes in number 9. He tells you about the specific rules of writing it, how it has to be written. What makes a kosher Megillah? Number 10 and 11. Okay, let's look at number 12. The reader should read the names of Haman's 10 sons and the word which follows, aseret, in one breath, to show the entire people that they were all hung and slain together. So this is something that, I don't know if you've seen that, when it's read, there's a part where it says, they executed Haman's 10 sons, and you read, they're long names, you have to do it that way. It is a universally accepted Jewish custom that as a reader of the Megillah reads, he spreads the text out as an epistle to show the miracle. When he concludes, he goes back, rolls up the entire text, okay, recites the blessing. 13, on these 2 days, the 14th and 15th of Adar, it is forbidden to eulogize and fast, because these are days of joy. Prohibition applies to all places. That's probably, let's see here. What is it? Oh no, let's look at, I want to show you the end about the other, okay. You should, yeah, you're supposed to drink until you become, on page 136, drink wine until he becomes intoxicated and falls asleep in a stupor. That's a good one. Okay, similarly, so this is halakha number 15. Okay, so at the bottom of 134. What is the nature of our obligation for this feast? A person should eat meat and prepare as attractive a feast as his means permit. He should drink wine until he becomes intoxicated and falls asleep in a stupor. Similarly, a person is obligated to send 2 portions of meat, 2 other cooked dishes, or 2 other foods to a friend, as implied by Esther 9:22, sending portions of food one to another. That is, 2 portions to 1 friend. Whoever sends portions to many friends is praiseworthy. If one does not have the means to send presents of food to a friend, one should exchange one's meal with him, each one sending the other what they had prepared for the poor and feast, and in this way fulfill the mitzvah of sending presents of food to one's friends. What are these called, these gifts? Yeah, shalach manot, or mishloach manot. And we're doing this we do this at Temple Beth-El, by the way. Packing little bags of gifts for our more senior congregants, and delivering them. And that's a great mitzvah to do. It's one of the mitzvot of Purim. So if you'd like to help with that, and Yanira is organizing, and she does need volunteers to help with packing and delivering. So please call her if you're able to help. And then 16. One is obligated to distribute charity to the poor on the day of Purim. At the very least, to give each of 2 poor people 1 present, be it money, cooked dishes, or other foods, as implied by Esther, gifts to the poor. We should not be discriminating in selecting the recipients of these Purim gifts. Instead, one should give to whomever stretches out his hand. Money given to be distributed on Purim should not be used for other charitable purposes. 17, it is preferable for a person to be more liberal with his donations to the poor than to be lavish in his preparation of the Purim feast, or in sending portions to his friends. For there is no greater and more splendid happiness than to gladden the hearts of the poor, the orphans, the widows, and the converts. One who brings happiness to the hearts of these unfortunate individuals, interesting, he talks about converts, and I don't know, resembles the divine presence. Okay, so you see here the mitzvot of Purim. There's the feast, there's the giving the mishloach manot, gifts to friends, and tzedakah to the poor, or the mitzvot of and Megillah, of course, reading the Megillah. So those are the 4. All right, so we made our way through a lot of his chapter on this. So we're going to end here. Remember, next week, no class. We will have class next on February 24th, in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. And if you want